Call the meeting to order, and prior to our first order of business, which is the Pledge of Allegiance, I'd just like to take a moment to introduce our two new student representatives. We have Kelly Flanagan, who's a senior, and Ruth Kelly, who's a junior, and they'll be with us this year, learning all about the Board of Education and telling us all about things that go on in the schools. So welcome. I look forward to working with you. So our first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I need a motion to approve the agenda. Need a second?
Second.
Okay, so moved by Andrea, seconded by, I'm going to say by Chris.
Okay.
Any changes?
I want to suggest one.
Yeah?
I think we failed to put student report here.
Okay.
Are you prepared? Do you have a prepared student report?
So we'll put that as item D under 6, student report. And that will be an ongoing thing at each meeting, that we'll have student report on the agenda.
Julie, would you make that note? Thank you.
Any other amendments to the agenda? All those in favor? It's unanimous. The next item is the approval of the consent agenda. We have 3 items. The minutes, and just a point of clarification, the approval of the minutes from September 16th was not a special meeting, it was a regular meeting. The meeting minutes reflect that it was a regular meeting, it's just written wrong on the actual agenda. So it was just a regular meeting. We also have an out-of-state field trip for the high school seniors, and a donation, 2 donations from the Truist Foundation for $40 and $26.33. I need a motion? Anyone?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Can I just, is the
Yep.
Washington DC trip, is that school vacation?
It is not.
Not.
It is not. It's the following Friday and through that weekend. So they are missing that Friday of school.
Friday.
I had the same question.
I guess it's just a Friday, I just wonder why,
And I don't know whether it was because of scheduling conflicts of other trips that families are taking, and that they thought that that might cut into the ability for the, I know that with these trips, they do try to ensure as many of the seniors can attend if they're gonna do it as a senior trip, so they may have felt like that would have.
right, okay.
Any other comments? No changes to the minutes? Always happy to get those donations. Okay, all in favor of approving the consent agenda? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Communications. Philip, do you have any communications?
We do not.
Okay. Audience of citizens. Is there anyone here who would like to address the board? And if you would like to address the board at this time, I just need you to step up to the microphone and state your name and your address for the record. Anyone? Okay. Superintendent's report.
Thank you. Superintendent's transition plan. So balancing management of the district and then really trying to better understand the district. I have had, tonight will be 32 interviews, one-on-one or small group interviews, mostly actually one-on-one. I met with a couple of grade level teams of teachers and a couple of groups of non-certified staff, but for the most part it has been one-on-one. I've completed the board interviews, if you will, the listen and learn piece. Next Wednesday I'll complete the administrator listen and learn sessions, so I've done one with each of my administrators. And then we'll move forward with, I'd like to see a little bit more of a balance of teachers here at the middle school and high school and at our elementary elementary school, so that will be my next focus in the coming month. But really very valuable opportunities for me to ask, once again, a standard set of questions for each group. So the Board of Ed, all of you had the same questions. And then obviously there was a good deal of dialogue and interaction, and so I appreciate that. I've been asked to give a quick report on our transportation, and Deb Johnson, as you know, will always give me her honest opinion, and according to Deb, things are working fairly well. I think the biggest challenge in transportation with our new company is the balance of a brand new company with policies, or I shouldn't say a brand new company, but DATCO with their set of policies, and then our former company with a different set of policies. So I think Deb is the best person to uphold those traditions in Portland because we're a small district. And she is really working with DATCO to make sure that any changes that are made in policies are really best for our kids in Portland. So, but according to her, and these are her exact words, most everything is working well. The NIAS report. So you probably know that I have received a copy of the draft NIAS report given to me by our two administrators here. That report cannot be released yet to the public and won't be released for another week or two, probably in September. The protocol is to go to you first and then to the rest of the board. But we've already started looking at the recommendations, those draft recommendations, and planning an approach to this so that we can give to you some thoughts about how we want to work towards those recommendations that are listed in the report. Toward that end, Scott, Andrea, Donna, and I met at the high school on Monday for a good 2-hour meeting, looked at every single one of the recommendations. What I asked them to look at initially was that these recommendations become not just a reason or a motivation for this school or this school in the middle school, but we look at the district-wide implications for them, because many of the recommendations can't be set in place in isolation in one particular school. You have to have your schools that all work toward this this final destination, if you will, in our K-12 system. So what we did is we tried to break down those that were school-specific and those that perhaps had more of a district implication to them. For instance, curriculum. Certainly what we do here needs to have some relationship with what's been done in the middle school, which needs to have a relationship with what's been done in the elementary schools. As I say oftentimes, a continuity of instruction that goes K-12. So that will, there are specific recommendations that we'll take a look at, district-wide recommendations. And I know we will be having quite a few discussions about that in forthcoming meetings. I think that's it. I've asked Donna to give a report on curriculum and instruction.
Okay. So I have 5 items. You have a long agenda, so I'll cut to the chase. I gave you a handout, which was released by the state, which is the student assessment calendar for this year. State Department of Ed has set these windows. It's not a flexibility item. They used to just set CMTs and CAPT in March. The science CAPT and CMT is still held in March, time at our discretion. The CMT Science Skills Checklist, that's for special education students, and that's done online, and there's a date for that. And then the Smarter Balance tests that they've set, grades 3 through 8, there's a window we can give at any time. The intention of Smarter Balance is to not just stop everything and start testing the way we used to do with CMT and CAPT and drop everything. It's to do it in a natural progression. If students are ready, they access parts of the test. So the grades 3-8 window is March 17th through the 12th. It's a longer window. And then the 11th grade one is April 27th to June 12th. And they've adjusted the amount of total testing time based on what they consider the average after the field testing. So I don't know if anyone has any questions about the test schedule. Gildersleeve Fiber, I'm continuing to work with Dave Kosminski from Town Tech and CLMP to get Gildersleeve added to the fiber connection that the other schools have now completed. And Dave is working to also get the firehouse as the extension when we get to Gildersleeve to get that other firehouse extended. So I'll continue to provide updates as that happens. Middlesex Consortium that we belong to, Donna Finkelstein runs it for us. She does she writes the grant for Perkins. She also helps us with individual groups. There's a superintendent's group, there's an assistant supers and directors group, and some of the principal groups provide different opportunities for us to meet and work with colleagues in our related districts. And we have, in my level of group, the directors and assistants, we look for professional development opportunities for teachers that are targeted to what they request, and usually bring in outside experts. So this year we have had teacher requests, and we've gotten someone. October 23rd, we're going to have a half day for high school, middle school, and a half day for elementary school for arts and music teachers. That's how Common Core relates to them in their subject area in their classrooms. And on October 30th, we're having the new social studies consultant at the State Department of Ed, Steve Armstrong, come and talk to all the 6 through 12 teachers because the state is adopting a new social studies framework. Supposedly in January they're adopting it. It's already been developed, and they're going to find out how things are going to shift, what things are going to move, and how it's cohesive with the Connecticut core standards in the English language arts as the subject areas. So they'll spend the entire day learning about the new frameworks and how it'll fit into changing their classroom curriculum and instruction. Last January, the district had signed a memorandum of understanding also with the State Department of Ed, and part of that included coaching opportunities and professional opportunities that the state was offering to anyone that signed that. And there were professional development training modules that were available to 4 coaches in the district, and Dr. Doyen had tapped different people in different levels. 2 went to language arts modules, and 2 went to math, and I've gone to as many as possible across the different grade levels. So we're down, we had them in the spring, 3 of the modules, and then September, October is module 4, and module 5 is just being scheduled. I'm actually going to one on Tuesday. And after we complete that, that is Common Core training as it pertains to subject areas and methods and suggestions on way we can roll it out within the district in terms of curriculum models that we could develop, lesson plan models, those kinds of things. And I'm going to be meeting with those coaches after we've all finished 5 modules and determine the best takeaways from those workshops that we spent. The last ones I've just gone to were really very, very good. I can see bringing a lot of things back to the teachers. But I want the teachers that are the coaches to tell me what they felt valuable and what they would like to share with their colleagues, and then we have to think about a way to share that information. And then the last thing is, when we did sign that memorandum of agreement, we had the opportunity last June. It was the last week of school, and Lori Bosky was nice enough to put together, we were allowed to apply for a grant for embedded coaching days. The State Department is paying for all of this through the RESCs. And we were allowed to apply for 10 days per school. So we did apply for all 50, and we were awarded 31. CREC is providing the professional development, and it's the equivalent of $23,000 if we'd had to pay CREC for those days. And the administrative team and Philip and I just met this morning as a group to plan how we're going to roll that out, make the best use of that time. And the CREC liaisons are going to contact the building principals and work out the schedules for their building. And that means, an embedded coach means the person's going to come in, talk to the teachers about, and we're using writing as the focus, because that's our district writing goal again this year. Language arts, grades 1 through 6, all the English teachers that teach anything in English language arts are going to have that coach come in, work with them on best ways of getting the instruction across, do some modeling in an actual classroom, then they're going to meet and critique and think of other things that they could tweak because of the way it works here, and they're going to have continuing days that they can follow up on that. At the middle school, high school, we determined that the unified arts teachers and the special ed teachers will have that training. So all of the special ed teachers in 7 through 12, PE, art, music, tech ed, and FCS will all have that training. And the same kind of embedded coach over a couple of months' time. So
And
we're really excited about the
And
opportunity.
at that point, when it has concluded, the team will come back again, evaluate the success, and then the next steps, because we may want to continue with this kind of a model for our teaching, for teaching professional learning if it's effective. if it's as effective as we plan it to be.
Yes, and CREC does this frequently for districts. This is a model they've used with great success, and it's all research-based, so we're really, really excited to have the opportunity.
And this was something that Lori Bosky applied for, like, as in a grant that
Yeah, well, the principals all had to put in what they want to do, but Lori, it was that last week
She
at school.
coordinated
She was the
it.
one that coordinated it.
Coordinated
I
all.
want to credit her for doing that.
So we essentially were able to tap into 31 free days of trial so that we can evaluate whether or not this is the type of model.
Absolutely.
That,
So, and they have tapped experts there's actually someone that works in the Unified Arts area that would be the person that would come. The same coach will come to all the elementary schools, so we have continuity across the buildings and for the 7-12 building.
right.
How did our 31 number out of 50 compare to other districts? How did we do?
I haven't heard yet. They've just started awarding. I'm actually going to a meeting tomorrow, and I was going to ask that very question, so I can give you an update. They generally, they take one aside and they give it to you so that we can have a half day to plan with the main consultant, and then a half day wrap up. And so I think they gave 6 per school instead of 10. But they had 1,000 total days for the whole state. So actually, I think we did pretty well, considering if you think about the number of schools in
Yeah.
the state, I think we did pretty well.
That's great.
We were hoping no one would apply, because it was that last week and it was kind of busy.
Anyone have any other questions for Donna? Thank you very much.
First, I was reticent, and the first thing I should have said was that to, again, publicly recognize our middle school for being named the 2014 Blue Ribbon School. Forgive me for not.
And just to piggyback on that, I did a little research and to give people an indication of what that means, the Blue Ribbon has been given out, the Blue Ribbon Award has been given out since 1982. And in Connecticut, from 1982 to 2014, there have been 148 schools that have been recognized. I looked at 2000 to present because I felt like it was more current in terms of the changes. I mean, the difference in the education program in the 80s versus 2000 is pretty significant, I would say. So there have been 67 schools since 2000. There have been a few schools that have in fact been recognized twice, once back in the 80s and then once again in 2000s. There have been few schools, or few districts that have had several schools recognized. But what I looked into a little further is that sometimes when there were 2 schools recognized within a district, one was public and one was parochial or private. And so they recognize both private and public. But the other thing that I did research was in all of the data that I looked at, the only other school district that has been recognized for Blue Ribbon in our DIRG is Litchfield, and that was just this year. So we were recognized back in 2011. We were recognized again in 2014. From what I can see, the only other school, and we have a fairly large DIRG, so I think that's pretty impressive for us. So to toot our own horn and to be proud of what we've accomplished as a district. And I believe that I was quoted in the press as saying that this is really a tribute to the work that has been done on the part of our students, our teachers, our staff, our administrators, and our town as a whole. Our parents who have supported those students, our town people who have supported those budgets. So it's something that Portland as a whole should really be proud of. It's not just something that the school should celebrate. It's something the whole town should celebrate. And it's really, one measure, but certainly as we can see, it's not something that's just handed out to anyone, so.
Thank you. So Laura Webb has recently had surgery, so I am going to give her a brief report. Preliminary projections are indicating that we are within our budget for the 14-15 fiscal year. A couple of points of interest. Our health insurance is projected to be below what you had originally budgeted due to some of the cost-saving measures that we have previously spoken about that are being implemented slowly in our district. As with most districts throughout the state of Connecticut, the increasing costs of special education are taxing us a little bit more than we expected, than we budgeted, so particularly with our outplaced students. Bill Neese and I, our Director of Student Services, are meeting now on a weekly basis and will throughout the year to monitor these costs, but also to look at the bigger picture, to look at special education and how we're implementing our related services here in Portland. But there are a number of high-cost, needy students that are in our district, K-12. And when I talk about high costs, it is, in the tens of thousands, perhaps even in the hundreds of thousands of dollars to educate them off-site from here because of their exceptional student needs that couldn't be met in our district, and they are exceptional needs. So I know that most of you have the background of that, but I think Bill and I talked today about him now coming to certain Board of Ed meetings to talk about some of these issues so that you can get a better grasp of some of them. But
And I'm sorry to interrupt, but I was just gonna say, I think it also bears mentioning again, because as we talk about our census staying relatively flat in terms of the number of students that we serve, the needs of those students are changing significantly. The educational needs, the financial needs, and we as a district have no control over whether somebody moves to Portland and needs special ed services. We automatically become responsible for whatever services that they have in place. So it's really a challenge, I think, with regard to monitoring and managing our budget. And one thing that I know that Laura, you put a great deal of time and energy into trying to keep tabs on that as best as you can, and to manage that and to inform people around things.
And one of the things that we do in our office, as is done in every school district, is we look at those costs that exceed 4.5 times your per pupil cost. So if you take your budget, you divide it by the number of your students, you have what is considered roughly a per pupil cost. The state of Connecticut reimburses towns or districts for anything that exceeds 4.5 times that per pupil cost. We'd love it to be anything that exceeds the per pupil cost because of that, the high costs associated with educating children with severe needs. But nonetheless, it's anything that exceeds 4.5 times. So we monitor that. Laura monitors that very carefully, and then we get 2 reimbursement checks, if you will, one in November or December, and then one again in May to help us. And we do, so that's an offset that we use, but they're pretty high costs.
Do they count the transportation in that number?
Yes, they do. Yeah, all services, except legal. I asked that question too.
Really?
Except legal services.
Interesting.
So, which sometimes in the world of special education is a high cost.
Substantial.
Yeah, they're sending you a message.
Yeah. Magnet school tuitions is on targeted based on your budgeted amount. So there's a couple of examples of things that are going one way and others that are going another way. So, and we'll try to do that each meeting so that we give you an
Great.
update and ask us questions for more specifics, if you will. Facilities updates. We're installing additional security cameras. I authorized this. Tim Nolan came to me and said there were 3 areas in the high school, middle school that still don't have cameras. He'd like every area supervised, and so I authorized that after consultation with Laura. And so we will I think those are actually online for being purchased immediately.
Do you have a cost related to
I
that?
don't yet, Laura, do you?
It's about $3,900.
$3,900.
We are, Paul has asked us to look at providing a truck, a maintenance truck, and then you also budgeted a vehicle for the lunch program. So we're looking at that, and at some point we'll come forward with that. So Laura's having some preliminary discussions right now with Tom Robinson, how to move forward with that. Paul and I are working on an issue at Biz with the adult bathroom, and to make some changes to some deteriorating walls. And Paul has almost successfully completed, very, very close, all of our ADA compliance issues. The cement pads, the fencing, the crushed stone for the wheelchair accessibility all have been installed this past summer. So I'm almost ready to sign off on that report and send it to the state.
Great.
All right. That's it.
Any questions for the business manager updates? Student reports. You guys are up.
Okay, so, just start off with,
You want to bring the mic a little bit closer and turn it on for you? So,
is it on my?
I don't think it is, no. You're good.
Okay, so starting off, a week ago, we had our Spirit Week, which we have at the beginning of every sports season, so fall, winter, and spring. And it was relatively successful for a first starting off Spirit Week. And what's actually good in connection to that is now if you go on the school website and you click on the blog, you can find pictures and updates about things that are happening in the coming weeks as well. So we're trying to get the blog off the ground with that.
Last Friday, we had a breast cancer dance, and we had 2 students host it for their capstone project, which is now mandatory to graduate. And they raised around $600. I believe about $400 of those dollars are going to breast cancer awareness, and $200 is going to project graduation. And so they successfully pulled off the dance and are hoping to pass their capstone projects.
And actually coming up this week, tomorrow and Thursday, the school is actually hosting the Shoreline Music Conferences. So we've had a couple students in the past that have done really well with that. So hopefully as Portland is hosting, it's going to be in the auditorium, in case anyone's interested. Hopefully we'll have some good turnout for that this year as well.
And then coming up this coming Friday, the Portland High School Band will be marching at the fair. And we're hoping that it's good weather. So.
We all are.
It's supposed to be nice weather.
That's good, yeah.
Just to follow up the Shoreline music piece, it's almost 300 kids, 285 children, I think.
Yeah, we got a lot of kids coming.
From
That's great.
the
All
area,
over
which
the
is
place,
really
yeah.
exciting.
Yeah.
The actual performance is next Thursday.
Next Thursday?
Yep,
Okay.
so this Wednesday is the
Rehearsal.
and then next
Oh.
Thursday is.
Okay, yeah, the
Yep,
next
it's
few days.
confusing because it's usually the same week, but I
Yeah.
think for scheduling reasons they had
Oh,
to,
okay.
so. Anything else? Any questions? Well, we're very excited to have you guys here. We always love to have student input and interaction, and we really hope that you guys feel comfortable to ask us questions if you don't understand something that we're doing or what we're talking about, to ask us to explain. Sometimes we talk about things enough that we forget that you might need an update on something or a little history on it. So we look forward to having you here.
Thanks.
And we'd love to keep you here, but we know if homework is awaiting.
Yes, yes.
And you need to leave, as we spoke,
Yeah.
feel free.
Yes.
Thank you.
That brings us to action items, and the first item under action items is our business manager discussion. And I just wanted to be clear about what our process is going to be for this, which is that the board has been asked to come prepared to talk about the business manager situation that has come up for discussion both in the press and at a joint meeting and at a meeting with the Board of Selectmen. And so what I've asked is that you come with your suggestions of how you would like to move forward with this. My goal is to keep the discussion moving in a forward direction. What do we do now? Less so than rehashing. We spent a lot of time talking about what happened at other, at the previous meeting. And so I would really like to work on what we need to do going forward. All of the ideas that are presented tonight will need to be run through our lawyer before we make any sort of decisions, because I really want to make sure that we don't try to do something that's not legal. That would not really be in our best interest, would it? So tonight is about discussion, and the action item will be to give Philip the authorization to present whatever ideas that we want to give him to our lawyers, and to come back to us with whatever feedback our lawyer gives us, our lawyers give us. And then the next meeting would be where we would discuss those and determine whether we act on anything. So, that said, I'd like to hear from the board.
Let's start with that. I discussed with Dr. O'Reilly after the meeting last couple weeks ago about how it would be probably a good idea going forward that we might want to have contracts for even our non-union employees. That way, there's no ambiguity in what we decide going forward and what we're voting on.
Mm-hmm.
That way, everything that's being presented is straightforward and out in the open. That way, it gives everyone equal opportunities, even those who aren't being represented by, a collective group. Yeah.
Are you asking that they be drawn up, or that you get copies of them?
Drawn up, like copies that we can see when we're voting on. So, like, that way, if there's a position change, that there's something there that we physically can see, and that way, it's just the way when we see a union contract, we review it and vote on it. It should be the same way for all employees rather than just union members.
I think just go right around the room.
And I'll start with, I'll piggyback on the policy end of it. Obviously, whenever we're gonna change a title or a position, I think we've all heard loud and clear that, I'm not dwelling on the past.
Mm-hmm.
There's room for improvement, to say the least, so I
Sure.
think in the future, obviously, we should, try to do the right thing, and I believe that would be posting any changes, for those positions. Having said that, that's just on the policy, and that doesn't necessarily address what's at hand. I think what's at hand is, we have a few rows in front of us, and obviously, the lawyer will have to, okay anything we choose to move forward with. I think, it's very obvious, I think, that we dropped the ball on a few things. Number one, we left it out of this current budget. That was a big deal, from the 80 to the 100, which would have obviously made more people aware of what was going on. Like I said in the previous meeting, not dwelling on the past, I was fully aware of the 60 to 80, and
We know that, Ben. I mean, we really do.
Thank you.
We
but
do.
I'll continue. So I was fully aware of the 60 to 80, and I was okay with that. Had I known there was a second part of this from 80 to 100, I would not have been okay
Mm-hmm.
with that. Having said that, I think we have a few roads in front of us, and keep in mind, I am not talking about any employee, I'm talking about a position here. I believe this position warranted the raise from 60 to 80. Having said that, I think we have to figure out where we want to go with this. In my opinion, one of the things I would suggest is, as a full board back then, and I'm not sure, I think there's only 3 of us. Mike, were you here? Okay, so then it was only the 3 of us that, tonight, that were even present back then when we actually voted on the 60 to the 80. So I was never okay going the 80 to the 100. My suggestion tonight would be, we go, at the very least, and obviously all this needs to go by the attorney, I would say we go back to the 80. And if we then choose to want to bring this position up to a $100,000 position, we involve the town, we involve more meetings, we are very transparent about where we're going with this. I never expected this position to be anywhere near 100, so am I clear on where I stand?
You are
Okay, then I
crystal
won't- then I
clear
won't
on where you
babble.
stand, Ben,
Then
that
I
you would
won't-
like to, and just so that I'm clear that I've got it down, that you would like the position to be, the salary to be moved back to 80,000, and that if there are any discussions about any increases with regard to salary for this position, that that be brought, before the town as a whole?
You know what, this is,
Okay.
to me, that's a substantial change. Obviously not dwelling in the past, there was a lot that went into the 60 to 80, we had a lot of discussion as a group. Having said that, I got on board, I was obviously convinced to the point where the position warranted the 80. I'm not, haven't changed my position on that at this point, but I definitely was not on board at above 80, to say the least.
Anything else?
I'll reserve the right to speak again.
Of course. Andrea?
Okay. I somewhat agree with Mr. Serb. I am not sure entirely how we go backwards. I think that my concern is all of the things that have already been expressed moving forward, especially as it relates to the communication in terms of when an action item is presented and the discussion around that action item. I know that I can speak for myself, but I don't make any, I voted. So shame on me if I was not clear, so I take responsibility for that vote. But I was not clear that that was an increase of salary that we were voting on. I just thought that we were voting again for the realignment of the position or back to what we had done. So I think that if we're going to, and especially making a movement like that, clearly an action item should have been more specific related to the salary that was in question.
So our
So
action
again, I
items
think that the,
specific.
right, action items being specific,
Mhm.
that the communication, and then when it's something as significant as that, even if people, I think it, it warrants to prompt, discussion and communication. And I don't know, I mean, we can't change the fact that things come up when they come up, and there were a number of members that were not present that night. So we can't change that. I mean, the board, things come up, it was the summer, it's just when it happened, but that is sort of unfortunate. I believe that it was 4 members versus 7, but that sometimes happens. It isn't like anybody planned it that way. So I don't know how we could change that. But I have a lot of concerns. I hear the concerns of the board, of the town, of the people. I apologize for missing, as I said, the last meeting. I wasn't able to attend when that was discussed. So I think we're just trying to do what we can do to remedy this situation and make sure that we're much more clear going forward.
So, just to clarify, action items should be more specific, that, that, you said you somewhat agree with Ben in terms, but you're not sure how do we go backwards, so meaning you agree that the salary should be reduced to 80,000 again?
Well, I guess what I feel is that, again, I'm gonna say, I voted, although I am going to sit here and say that I was not entirely clear that I was voting for an increase to $100,000, and my vote may have been different. But my vote is my vote, and it's a done deal, so I'm saying that, but if there were any reason why we would in fact go backwards or had the ability to do that, I also think that that position and that it warrants for the person to be treated the way in which we treat other non-union employees, such as Meg or Paul, and how we include them on that list to be given an increase, an annual. So in other words, there's an increase warranted because it was a different budget year. Right? Does that make sense?
I lost you, I'm sorry.
I think what you're saying is don't cap her at 80. She's still
Well,
entitled
I
to
don't
raises
think that's
and if
right.
they-
So if
yeah,
you
yeah,
were to
no, no,
say,
no,
you have to give an increase that in terms of how we vote for the non-union salaried employees
Okay.
in the district.
Okay, now I
And
understand,
the-
thank you.
And the only other thing I think on what she said is obviously in the future, if had the minutes in July reflected specifically 80,000 to 100, because it was taken off the agenda, that would have helped all of us
Yes.
And it would have been a few months.
Well, that's what I meant about the
Yeah,
communication.
being
right.
more specific
Right.
with the
Yeah.
action items and the.
Right,
and
I
the-
think that would help on big things like that.
Sure.
Obviously, if it's on our agenda for more than just one meeting and very specific, I think it gives everybody an opportunity to then read it.
Sure. Chris?
Well, I don't really have anything new to add, because I think I would agree with what's been said. I wasn't here at that meeting, and I guess I'm blissfully ignorant, because I wasn't able to come to the meeting with the Board of Selectmen. But just in talking with folks around town, I mean, I can't like put myself back in the past and think what I would have voted and how I
Right.
would have voted, but definitely, I think having transparency in terms of contracts, I think is important. You know, I mean, I'm still relatively new to this, so I'd like to have as much information as I can to make an informed decision. I think since, I guess just to add to that, since I'm kind of the sort of voice of education on this sometimes, I would really like to see when we do things like that, how it is and how much it costs in comparison with towns in our dirt. That's all I'm gonna say about that. I think if we looked
Let me,
at-
I'm sorry,
Go
just to
ahead.
get clarification, Chris, you're talking about if we're talking about raising someone's
Correct.
compensation, that we would look at that, and that was actually done.
Right.
Um,
Just, I
but-
think going
but
forward, that's.
I think going
that's
forward, I agree with
really
you that that's
important.
huge, that we know exactly how we're comparing, especially, most importantly, within our dirt. We would agree with that it, you know, it's hard to compare, even though we have neighbors, that it's
Right.
better to compare within our dirt, because that's how
Correct.
we're grouped.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Good.
And I think just as kind of an aside to that, I mean, that was something we were talking about when we hired, for example, a new superintendent.
Mhm.
Because I think being consistent like that, I mean, obviously, one of the big challenges of being in a small town, but also trying to provide a quality education, is trying to maintain that balance
Mhm.
between, you know, salaries and taxes. I think one of the things that really blindsided me about this was, I guess, not really being aware of the concerns of the town, and in particular, the town employees, and how this, you know, how it was decided that this was going to be a union position or not. That's something I've heard a lot of concern about myself. And yeah, I mean, I'll just echo again, just, you know, being specific on action items, because I'm new to this, I've only been on here since November, so I'd like to know exactly what it is I'm voting on in the future. So
Sure.
thankfully, I don't have the past to rely on, but I think going future, I would just like to know as much as I can to make an informed decision.
Mr. Pelton?
So I can't say anything new that everyone else hasn't said already, much more succinctly, but I missed most of the discussion we had about this a year and a half ago, whenever the last meetings were, but I did take a look at the notes that I had. And I think one of the reasons why it got passed is, I think one of the reasons why it was a little bit unclear was that it didn't reference any of the discussions from before, or what the amount was going from and to, because it was also set up as, it was already in the budget, it had already been approved, so it seemed more of a, it's already in the budget, it's already been green lighted, so that made it something that didn't raise a red flag, certainly with me. Now, in retrospect, looking back, that is a big deal, it's a lot of money, I understand the concern that they have here, and some of the other peripheral concerns to that as well. But I think the good news is that it's an easily avoidable situation going forward. I mean, this is not a hard problem to solve with clarification and, you know, some simple steps. So that encourages me and makes me feel much more confident that it's easy to solve. Now, the harder part is what do we do going backwards, and I'm really still undecided about that because it is complicated. It's already been given, and there's a number of issues that go with that, and that, I think, is going to require a balancing act. I really don't have the answer to that yet. So
I appreciate that.
that's my position.
So, there, from what I can gather, and please correct me if I misspeak anyone's points, but, there are several suggestions on the table. One is that we have contracts for all non-union employees, and we don't currently have contracts for all non-union, do we, or?
I believe we do.
We do?
We have a benefits contract.
A benefits contract?
And then every year, we
salary statement, but not a contract as it were for union, just the benefits side. Okay, so, we need to talk about what that would look like as a board, and what we would wanna see in that, and then that's the kind of stuff that the lawyer has to say, well, yes, you can do that, or no, you can't do that, or no, you don't want to do that. In the private sector, there's no such thing as contracts. It's employment at will. And so that it's a very different approach to things. So I think that there's pros and cons to looking at it from both sides. I also have heard loud and clear, both from the board and from many people, the desire for more transparency, and that is why this discussion is taking place in open session as opposed to executive session. This could have easily been classified under executive session, as it has to do with a position and potential negotiations or changes, but we really felt like it was important to have the discussion in open session to begin to really make sure that, well, I felt that because I wanted to make sure people understood that I heard loud and clear the need for transparency. The question on the table is, how do you go backwards? What can you do? There is a recommendation from a couple of people saying they'd like to see the salary be bumped back to 80,000, and so we need to take that to the lawyers and say how or can we do something like that, and how does that impact, and what is the process for that? And then there's also some thoughts about, I'm not sure what I want to do or if I want to do anything, and there is certainly that course of action as well, to not do anything about this specific position, but to really focus more on not letting something like this occur again. Really looking at the comparison of salaries within our DIRG, not just for non-union, but for all of our positions. Did I capture pretty much what's been discussed? There was some whispering. Do you guys have anything?
No, I
Yep.
just, I'm sorry, I had a question.
Sure.
I don't know if this is the appropriate time, but one of the things that I've heard, I wasn't at the meeting last week, but one of the things I heard over the last couple of days since then is a question of why it wasn't put out publicly for others to also apply for the position. So I guess my question is, what qualifications were required for the position? Because I believe Laura was qualified, overqualified the previous position, and was perfectly qualified for the new position. I just don't recall the exact qualifications. And was there anybody else in town that really could have bid for that anyways?
There probably certainly was.
Okay.
I don't know what all the qualifications are that all the
Right.
town people have, but there was a requirement by the state
Right.
that they have a business manager certification.
Right, okay.
So, the choice to not post it was at the request of our superintendent, saying, I have a viable candidate internally who's familiar with things, and I'd like to promote her from within.
Right.
In hindsight, as I have said publicly, would it have been better to post it and have there be the opportunity for anyone and everyone to apply? Yes, it would have been better. And would it have been ideal to have everything as transparent as people would like? Yes. And the only thing that we can do is strive to do better.
That was just Chris.
We
Thank you.
can't undo
Of course.
what's been done. We can't, it was handled the way it was handled.
And kind of following up with that though, because the position wasn't publicly posted, do we have any legal requirement to do that? And would there be any consequences as, say, a legal reversal?
Everything that I have researched in our bylaws and in our policies has shown me nothing that requires us to. And as we look at our policies, I also looked at the town charter to see if there was anything in there. I didn't, and I'm not a legal person, so again, this is a question that will go to our lawyer. Should there be something in there? This is why we're gonna bring up and review all of our policies, and really begin to look at, just because it isn't in there doesn't mean it shouldn't be in there type of thing.
I think, you know, just a couple things. I mean, one, and this isn't my bailiwick either, but I don't know why the decision would have been made to post a position like that and not have it be posted internally. I mean, as far as opening up to the union and the town employees. And then I think one of the things that I've heard that, you know, I really sympathize with is that if you sort of look at this from the outside looking in,
Mhm.
you know, from the town looking into the board, you know, one could make the case that we as a board, I mean, not me because I wasn't there, but voted to approve a substantial increase in salary when there are certainly people in town who have not received increases in salary. And I think that, I mean, that's sort of my, I guess, assessment of the frustration. And I'm not really sure why that decision was made. And that's, again, why I would say going forward, I really want to know all the facts before I ever have to vote on something on this in the future. And then I think I'd be curious to see what the legal ramifications of, you know, going back or moving forward as far as, you know, reposting that or something would be.
So another idea is whether or not we repost the position?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, you
Mhm.
know, 'cause
No,
again,
that's-
I'm not the legal guy.
And neither am I, and that's
Right.
why we're going to talk to our lawyers and find out. But these are why people, you know, I think need to raise these kinds of points.
And if I could piggyback on that point, just in the sake of saving time and not having another meeting, so my position, because I didn't make it 100% clear. If it is determined we can't go back to the 80 or whatever, then I want to put on the table that we then eliminate the position, go back to the position we had, and start over. And we as a board have the right to eliminate positions and create positions, and if we aren't able to do the lateral, then obviously I feel that we have to do something. So that would be.
So that's the other, that if there's not an opportunity to go back on a salary, that eliminating the position, which would mean then, we need to talk about the ramifications of removing the current person in the position, and then we would start over. When you say start over, you mean start back at posting for a business assistant, or start posting for a business manager?
Assistant, and offer the position back, obviously, to whoever, you know,
Wait.
in the position now.
So
Going back to the old position.
So you want to eliminate the business manager position altogether
And then have discussion whether we choose to have that again and start over at the 60.
Okay.
That would be.
So wait,
Obviously,
I
the
just wanna
lawyer has
capture
to
this.
review
So
all this. I'm
eliminate
just
business
putting it
manager.
on the table. I'm not saying that is
Mhm.
where I'm leaning. I'm just saying, for the sake of saving time, all options should be discussed at this point.
Sure. So the business assistant position would be posted.
Or reinstated if we were allowed to do that also. I'm not necessarily saying we.
Or
if-
reinstated.
If that meets all the criteria and passes.
Reinstated how? What do you mean? Saying to
Offering to the last person that had the position.
we made you business manager, now we're not gonna make you business manager, but you can still be business assistant, is what you're saying?
No, I believe the way I phrased it was, we would no longer have this position, but we would be opening up this position, and we'd be offering it to you, is how I would phrase it.
So we wouldn't post it then?
If we did not have to, I would say that we then shouldn't, but if we
But
would have to.
isn't that in direct conflict, Ben, with what we've just been saying here, which is that we need to post all positions?
Maybe you're right, then we should post that. That's why we're asking the lawyer.
Okay. I'm just getting clarification on this. Andrea, you started to say something.
Well, because now I just caution us and I have a concern that, you know, we're saying all these things, well, we could do a lot of things and to go all the way back, but to me, and maybe I'm wrong, this became an issue in August of 2014. This was not an issue when, in June of 2013, or whenever it was, that we sat in a full board in consensus agreed to change that position, and we were all right with the level of the salary. So the issue now, and I'm not sure, and maybe people would argue, because now the argument can be, well, why do you need a business manager, or, you know, why do you have that? But that was never an argument until the salary got to a level where people evaluated and said, should have done this, should have done this, should have done this. But I do sort of have a concern with that this really was not an issue for anybody until 2014.
No, I agree with that. Having said that, if we can't, the 80 and up is where the big issue
Yes,
came.
I agree.
And if we legally can't go from 100 to 80 for that position, then I'm still not comfortable with the 80 and up regardless. I would then want a plan B, how to, you know, how the lawyer tells us to move forward.
To totally undo what we thought was right a year.
Yeah, I was fine with it, and I was with you on that one. The 60 to 80, we were all there, full board, we were all, I
Right,
think, fully
so I
aware
don't-
with what we were
So I
voting.
guess I just, okay.
Right.
I'm just stating my.
Right.
Okay.
Other comments that people have, other thoughts, other ideas that we want presented to the lawyer?
Sounds like we're gonna have an expensive lawyer bill.
Oh, well, we're not ready for public comment, I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry, I apologize. I will ask for public comment, but at this point, we're still on board discussion. Sorry. I hate when people have to get up and then it's like the walk of shame when they have to walk back. Okay, so I'm gonna move us to our next, well, we need to make an action item. So I need somebody to make a motion.
Okay, so the motion you're looking for, to recommend to the full board, to authorize the superintendent of schools, Dr. O'Reilly, to proceed, based on our discussion today, to consult with the attorney
About the ideas.
about the, as discussion as presented tonight.
I'll second that.
So I need a second. Rob is seconded. Any discussion?
Yes. Do you want that written? Do you want him to appear here to answer questions? That is your prerogative as a board.
We'd like,
Back
I'd like to hear,
Yeah.
answer questions, because it's such a.
I'd like to see it written first and passed out, like sent out as an email to the board, and we'll make the decision afterwards to have them appear at a board meeting.
Yeah.
Save the cost if we can.
You have to be careful about the deliberation thing.
Okay.
Everything has to be above board, so you send something out, you can't then decide what your next step is as a board. It has to be
In
at
a
this
public
level, you know what I
meeting.
mean?
Yeah.
I
So-
think, yeah, he's saying ask these questions
Yep.
that we've instructed you to ask. Get the answers in writing.
As part of your next board packet.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then we will all, as a board, discuss those results,
Okay.
and then decide how to proceed, whether it's bringing him here, whether it's more questions.
We're already gonna be spending a lot of money on, asking
I
a lot
agree,
of
that's
questions.
why I wanted to.
Yeah.
And if we feel that, you know, we wanna have them here to ask more questions in person, and that way we can get some public comment and more visibility from that, I think that'd be, you know, not a bad idea, but we'll proceed once we get the answers.
Let's
What
make
do
sure
what do we have? What do we ask
make
them
sure
about?
we know what the questions are.
Yes.
So I want to make sure we are clear here exactly what they are.
Yeah, because we could spend a lot of money on an attorney
You
Right.
sitting here
could
answering
spend a lot.
questions. And I'm not sure that's the road we want to go down. I think we need specific questions and to have them answered, and then we go from there.
And is it realistic to have the answers by the October 21st meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
So,
Is it possible?
Everything's possible.
It's possible. Is it realistic? Yes. Will it happen? That'll be up to the attorney.
There you go.
so, do you need more guidance on what questions you want us to ask?
I just want to make sure we do know, so let's recapitulate
Okay.
if you don't mind.
So, one of the things that we want to know is, with regard to contracts for non-union employees, maybe they have a sample that they, or maybe they have a recommendation about whether or not we would want or not want contracts. Is that, and anytime I'm saying that, I'm looking for
Yeah.
Yep.
acknowledgement from
Yes.
you guys about this. we need to know whether or not, because we didn't post the position, whether or not we broke any rules or laws with regard to that, and what we would do in response to that.
Was within a right.
Right. We need to know whether or not we have the ability to roll back a salary and how we would go about doing that. And is there anything else? Yes.
I think
Mike?
one thing too, with that question about rolling back the salary, I mean, this is really rolling back the salary without cause, right? There wasn't anything I think Laura's done that has, that has been an issue. So I think the question, it really should be specifically, can we roll it back without cause? Because it's easy to roll back or eliminate positions as things, but we're doing
Gotcha.
this
Good
because
point
of.
of clarification, thank you, Mike, I appreciate
So.
that. Any other specific questions that we want Philip, Dr. O'Reilly, to ask of the lawyer? Okay.
Tell them to respond with short sentences. Lawyers never
Never
respond
did.
with short
They always-
sentences. They charge by the word, all right.
Okay, so we have had discussion, so now we need to, I think, restate the motion.
Julie, do you want to read back what they have?
With those
And then-
questions.
Well, I think it's those specific questions that we want as part of the motion.
I think I have them.
I-
I think I have them. There's three, correct?
Yeah.
I think I have.
Contract for non-union employees.
Yep.
So,
Um,
Legal report.
The posting.
Maybe does the attorney have a template that we could look at in the future?
Or the town.
Yep.
Does the town side have that to save money?
Do we break any rules or laws when not posting, or was it our right to do it? Was it the board's right to do it? Can we roll back a salary and how would we, if we can, without cause? And I had another one. Can you repost? Is that one of your
Yeah.
other questions
well,
or not?
I don't know as though we need to ask the lawyer that. You can always you can eliminate a position and repost it. You can repost a different position. You can't eliminate a position and then repost the position again. That's illegal. Even I know that. Because that's just, that would be an easy way to get rid of the problem employee, is if you, just, we're gonna eliminate your position. Oh, no, we need this position again. So if we eliminate the business manager position, then we've eliminated the business manager position. Okay. Again, in the interest of making sure that people understand what they're voting on, do we need to reread this motion to make sure everyone is clear? Okay,
Yes, please.
all right,
I'll try.
go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to the full board to authorize the superintendent of schools, Dr. O'Reilly, to consult with the board attorney to provide written feedback to the board for the following issues. Whether or not we can enter into a contract for non-union employees, and is there a template or some other tool that we would be able to follow or use? Number two, in not posting the position originally, is there any rule or law, did we break a rule or law in the decision not to post the position initially? And number three, do we have the ability as a board to roll back the salary without cause, and if so, how would we do that?
I need a second.
I'll say.
I'll second.
Second by Rob. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next action item is the Board of Education policy review options.
So in my memo to you, I asked you to look at two options for us going back or reviewing our policies and reestablishing the policy subcommittee, and then using some resources, whether legal or through CABE, which is, as you know, Connecticut's association that represents you as board members. And so there are two options before you. And I think, you know, we should have some discussions about both documents, both the one from Shipman and Goodwin, and I'm sure you have questions about how all this works. I can speak to both to some extent because I've used Shipman and Goodwin as a consultant when I had specific questions about a particular policy that CABE may not have done. But I've also used CABE through the policy updates services successfully over the previous 9 years as superintendent in Hartford, and things went well. So both are good options, but I really need to hear back from you. I don't think that moving without some help in this area is a wise decision. I think we need to have either CABE or an attorney assist us looking at what's in place, what needs to be updated, what doesn't need to be updated, and what policies may be missing that we really should have. So questions, thoughts?
Looking at the two documents that you gave us,
Yep.
How much is it gonna cost for each one? Cause I know there's a flat fee for the Shipman and Goodwin for the 3,500, but then it says there's additional hourly rates which aren't really specified, and the CABE cost as well. So I think that's 9,000 for our district size, and then there's additional fees as well. But I think those are usually covered in an annual fee that I think we're already covered with. But I just want to see the two costs side by side. You know, lawyers' flat fee plus their hourly rate, and versus all the costs that we would incur going through CABE. They're just not. I don't know. They might be there. I'm just not seeing it as clearly as I'd like.
And having said that, I would prefer we as a board try to tackle, going through this, even if it's, quickly, and determining which ones we don't need to change at all, and why reinvent the wheel at a cost if we're satisfied with what we have. Because regardless who we hire, or CABE or the attorney, it may not reflect what we as a court want. So
That's the good thing about, though, the fact that now you'll have an operating policy subcommittee, because nothing that anybody writes, whether it's Shipman, Goodwin, or CABE, goes through gets approved without a really thorough vetting. Typically, in my past, the policy subcommittee reviews it and takes 2 meetings to review it.
And that's typically been our practice.
And then forwards it to the full committee, and then the full committee takes either one, based on your bylaws, and I don't recall whether it states 1 or 2, but we had 2 where it would be vetted. And sometimes it's sent back to the policy subcommittee for further review because full board had some concerns with particular items.
having said that, I still think whether it's the subcommittee or the full board, if there are certain parts of it that we have no issue with, we then shouldn't be opening it up for change at a cost, whether it's CABE or the attorney, is what I'm saying. But obviously the areas that do, then we would proceed with what you're saying.
Other comments?
So I heard you say, Philip, that you didn't think it was wise for us to try to tackle doing some of this? Is that based on some prior experience?
It is. I mean, I think for 9 years, this has been probably the most active subcommittee with which I have been involved in Hartford. And it really was a well-oiled machine, so to speak. You know, CABE would give us the stuff to review. There were some upfront costs, and I'm not sure we need to have that upfront cost. But I do think we need somebody to look at what we have besides us, including me, just because, there's some history to those policies, but a lot has changed in education law in 10, some of these policies are 15, 16, 20 years old, and a lot has changed. And I think it would be great for us I think it would be advantageous to spend some money to hire either CABE or Shipman and Goodwin to look at what we have and then make the recommendation for the next step. So, you know, one of your options would be, obviously, it probably would be more costly to go with Shipman and Goodwin because it would take some hourly time for them to dissect those 3 rather large books. Your outcome may be more streamlined in that manner because they're really gonna take a legal look at that. CABE, however, you know, you have the ability for Vin Mistaro, who is really the policy guru for the state of Connecticut and for CABE, to look at what we have and for $1,800 to audit what you have and to tell you, listen, you need to start all over again and go with the customized policy service. Or these are the policies that we can target and we'll provide you with some ongoing assistance as you review them. So that's one option to go through.
Are there any other towns in our DIRG that have done either Shipman and Goodwin or CABE and have a packet I could look at and compare? And if that's gonna be the outcome, couldn't we just read it and choose whether to adopt it or not?
I'm sorry, Ben, you're requesting that we ask people, other schools in our DIRG, if they'll give us their policies so that we can review them and
Well,
determine whether.
I would think the
No, I'm
policy-
asking, I'm not
Right,
questioning.
I would think what I would wanna find out is, are there any that have done this change recently, and could we get a copy? I know we could get a copy of their policies, and then go from there. I mean, there's a lot of cost. This could get expensive, and I understand the need for it, but I think we should, I don't know, personally, I'd like to see what the big changes are. If somebody has recently gone through this, is it big? Are we getting something substantial for 10 grand, or are we getting minor changes that are not gonna help this district at all? I'd like to see somebody that's gone through this and see their policy and compare it to our own. That's my personal, I'm just one guy up here, so
Mhm.
you guys, that would be my take on it. I'd like to see.
So to poll our DIRG,
Not necessarily the whole DIRG, and I'm sure you know a lot of people in the superintendent world, where we could figure out who's gone through this and take a
but you
look
want
at
it in our DIRG.
I think that would be more helpful.
I don't know if you know.
If not, we're giving you permission to get to know somebody.
Well, I mean, I think along those lines too. I mean, I was on the policy subcommittee. I think I've met with that group once. And it seems like before we jump in and decide to spend a bunch of money, that maybe we want to actually get the policy committee going again. And, I mean, I know it's a big chunk of documents, but before we pay somebody else to go and examine those things, I mean, I would like at least the opportunity to look at it and sort of, and I guess I hear what you're saying is maybe almost like, I would like to see from somebody what it is that you would get for the amount of money that we would spend. I don't want to go look at East Hampton's policies, but if somebody recently in the area has hired CABE or, you know, the other attorney to look at that, what did you get? Were you happy with what you got? Did it make a big difference? You know, that kind of thing.
Well, I think if we were gonna start the committee, it would be, especially if we're gonna go fresh into this, and a lot of us haven't really looked at the policies in the past, it might be good to have a professional actually look at it, just at, as you're saying, the audit, spending the money, going through CABE, just having them say, this is where you're strong, this is where you're weak, and then we
Yeah.
can use that as a stepping
We
ground.
haven't even looked at it yet.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like,
but it might
if we
be a
had,
good
like,
way
6
for us.
months to maybe look at it, then we could decide. I don't know.
But what if you just did that? And so it's not a $10,000 bill, it's a $1,800 bill. And you sit down with Vin
With them,
Mistaro.
yeah.
After he's done this audit, and ask some of those critical questions that Ben is,
That's like
you know,
PD.
give us what, so our next, if he says our next step is a customized policy service, which could be more costly, well then give us what you have done in the past to
Right.
show us what's different from what we already have now. we could take the approach that we have now of subscribing to our, the $250 a quarter. What we get is the policy updates that are not specific to us. And, and most of them are reviews of past policies that have changed because of legislative updates. We could do that. What my concern is that there may be some of them that we haven't done that with. And I'm not the person to tell you that unless I go page by page, and that's really what Vin's expertise is in, so.
Phil, is that what we get now? I mean,
This
that
is what you
we-
get now.
What we
Yeah.
have been getting,
Yeah.
yeah, over the years.
Yep, yep. But what you haven't been getting is the customized update, so that what we did in New Hartford is we subscribed, and so that when these new laws were passed, they took a look at our existing policies and
Right.
said, out, or add this to it. And some of it was redundant, but we learned how to streamline through that as well.
Right, that would be my comment. My opinion, is sort of in looking at this, that, my gut reaction to this and the information you sent was the audit does sort of make sense to me. I mean, I've been on the board for 6 years, and quite frankly, we haven't done a lot of policy work. We do, but I know that if any of you that get emails are on the CAPE system, you could weekly get stuff about policies. You know, you're always reading, it's really overwhelming sometimes, and I know that in a way that comes to us, but I get concerned that I would have a concern about how up-to-date our policies really are. And so, and, you know, money, albeit, you know, that 1,800, but, you know, money may be well spent to at least have that evaluation and start us down the right path.
And then begin to work with the policy subcommittee as an initial meeting, have FinCom actually sit down with you and explain what his audit then
And
reveals.
if I can also just be honest, then I would feel that this board then truly needs to make a bigger commitment to the and I'm just looking around at all of us collectively, to subcommittees and those sort of things, that it's the more work, which we have, you know, probably not done the greatest job, right, in the last year or so, right? So that's another thing, that if you're saying that, on the one hand, you know, we could say, yeah, not spending money to do our stuff, but then it's us doing all of this, right? And sometimes we need to at least have a base of, a foundation, and I think the audit sort of gives that. But that's my opinion.
Any other comments?
I guess my only question would be, do any other districts do all this in-house? Do they have staff in the superintendent's office that reviews policy and makes these suggestions to the board for because obviously.
I can only tell you what I know from districts that I've
Yep.
been involved with. And you'll have districts that don't do any work and have a rather messy manual and, you know, no real organization to it. You'll have some that does it along the way, and then you have some that really devote the time and energy. And I'd say most of them really do use somebody to help them at least get established, and then a new process defined. So, you know,
You bring up a great thing. If we do get on board for this $1,800 audit and suggestions where to go, I personally would then want to see this added to somebody's position to then make suggestions for us to change, whether it's you.
It's my position.
Okay.
It's my responsibility then
I'm
to
trying to-
take it from where,
Okay.
you know, once we get it, first of all, it's my responsibility to get it to the place that you as a board instruct me to get it to. And then it's my responsibility to make sure that we don't drop the ball, and I'm gonna keep this policy subcommittee's feet to the fire, and, because this stuff comes fast and furious. There are lots of changes in public education, and we can fall behind, and really put yourself at a liability as a board if you don't.
And I think that's what I was getting at, as elected people that dedicate our time to this stuff. I think it would be a little much to look at every email and then try to decipher what changes need to occur.
That's my
Right.
job.
That's-
Right,
that's-
that's my
So,
job.
That's his-
But
but
it's-
I do get it. You're saying we should be looking at it. And so
It's
if
that team
it
thing
is an
again.
$1,800 cost to figure out where we're at, and that is pretty much gonna be the extent of our costs, I could get on board with that. And then, but moving forward, we then make our own changes and fix it ourselves to be in alignment with where we need to be. I think.
Well, and, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, continue. No, I'm good.
I was just gonna say that I think that we need to understand that, to say that, you know, we do pay $250 a quarter for this. So it's not 1,800 and we're done, it's 1,800 and then we maintain. So I don't wanna,
Oh, yeah, yeah,
again,
no,
I
no,
don't
no.
want any misunderstandings, Ben.
No, no,
I
no.
want it to be crystal clear.
$250 a quarter. I like that number. I
that-
was okay with that number.
That we have ongoing costs that are associated with policy updates and upkeep. And I wanna echo what Andrea said, which is that we as a board have a responsibility that was made crystal clear to me in the joint meeting, that we have a responsibility to take the work that we have been assigned seriously and to devote time, our time, to review materials, to come prepared to meetings with feedback, with direction for our superintendent. That is what we've been charged with. And anything short of that is a disservice to the Board of Education. So, there's, go ahead.
Just one more comment. I don't think you should ever create new policies without putting them through your lawyer, showing your
Absolutely.
lawyer first. So it's always gonna cost you some money.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's, you know, a penny wise is a pound foolish, as my father used to say. You know, you really gotta, you know, make
Well,
sure.
And in all fairness, I think that's where your expertise and by reading what is being sent to us for potential policy changes and making a decision where we should go with it is the way we should go. And another disservice that we could all do is try to create our own changes and make suggestions, and that would be worse than
Right.
Catastrophe.
Yes, so
Agreed.
I wanna make sure we're all on the same page.
Agreed.
Okay.
Can I just ask one additional question? Is sort of it, can you, Dr. O'Reilly, do you think our policy is, what's the word?
You prepared
Needs
for this
to, I
answer.
mean, is it,
Very outdated.
does it need a lot of work?
Well, when I see policies that back in 1999, I have to then say to myself.
Right. What's going on?
What's going on?
Right, so,
We need to
so it was
update
sort
these.
of a little bit of a flag
Some
for
of
you?
them may be.
Yes,
yeah,
right, okay.
right.
So that's my,
If
yeah.
I saw policies that the latest dates were 2006, 7, 8, I'd feel more comfortable. The fact that they're 2004 or 1999 makes me a little
Yeah,
uncomfortable.
thank you.
Pre-internet.
So, I need a motion for an action item for this, policy review.
I like.
Andrea.
Andrea, I will make a motion to the full board, to move forward with a policy policy audit service, using a CABE, let's say, a CABE policy audit service in the amount of $1,800.
Need a second? Mike? Any discussion?
The only discussion I would add, do we get does that 1,800 include the visit we're gonna be getting at the end?
I think it actually says here that he would consult with the district.
On-site consultation is included.
Perfect, perfect. Just wanna make sure that we're clear
Have
in
it
the
written
motion.
right there.
Yeah, it's right here in the green.
It could be written there, but I wanna make sure.
Oh, in the
we're all-
motion.
Yeah, I
Well, I
wanna make
didn't-
sure we're clear that there isn't gonna be another fee for that.
Do you want me to make another
No,
motion again?
No, I think we all know
Okay.
what that is now.
So my only other discussion is that, that I really do think that, there are gonna need to be some investments made to, catch up on some things, and I think this is a wise investment on our part. We've had an ongoing relationship with CABE, and I think that it will, be in our best interest to have this initial audit, to provide provide us with some feedback and direction for the policy committee. So, just need a vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Next action item is the Board of Education goals, which were also provided in your packet. And were an item that we discussed at our last meeting. So, Dr. O'Reilly put them into, the format that we discussed, titling the 4 items as educational leadership, organizational management, community and board of education relations, and personal and professional qualities and relationships. And he took our suggestions of items that we wanted to see as goals, and he categorized them for us. And now I think what we are challenged with is that we need to choose, because we can't work on all of this, we need to choose what our initial focus is going to be. Would you-
Some of it, and do we have even policy here?
We don't, and I think
So
that's,
I would recommend
yeah.
that we create a goal to begin this policy, review process, to establish by June 1st that I come to you with a policy review process. Plan. And maybe even you want me to begin, we want to begin that before then.
Mhm.
But we don't have to even put dates, just to say, let's start this process. And I want them to be as measurable as, I want you to be able to use them as measurable items when you do my final evaluation. So be clear as to what your expectations are.
So, an additional goal, which I think is all on its own under the Board of Education goals, would be the policy review process, and to have a plan and in place of how we're going to go about that policy review. And we have the beginnings of that by saying we're gonna have an audit, so we have some structure around that, so the audit needs to take place, and the outcome needs to be shared with the full board, and the recommendations need to be laid out, and the policy committee needs to be convened to move forward on their work. So those are all measurable.
Mm.
Other thoughts about other Board of Education goals, which will translate, just so that we're clear, into superintendent goals that he'll be evaluated on at the end of the school year.
One of the things I've heard from you since the very beginning is the professional qualities and relationships, personal and professional qualities and relationships. So I've had these 32 meetings.
Mhm.
They've been for a reason.
Mhm.
So what's the goal behind that? Effective communication on all letters and at all levels, inform and engage internal and external stakeholders. So is that, to some extent, can you create a measurable goal for that?
I think there are milestones along the way. I think your report shared with us of what your findings are, what you've learned, is one very measurable milestone. Can people think of other?
Well, I mean, you could do climate surveys, things like that.
In the process.
And that's
Okay.
measurable.
2 weeks, they're
Yeah.
out.
Okay.
They'll be out.
I think that would be really telling.
Parents in each exiting grade of each of our schools, except the high school, will be grade 10 instead of grade 12.
Mhm.
So, you understand?
Yep.
All staff and students at exiting grades,
Mhm.
except. So,
Yeah,
Great.
that's great.
yeah.
The only thing I'd want to add is on the first section, educational leadership. where it says strengthen the graduation requirements, which I think it's good as a district to want to excel and be better. I just want to be careful that we don't make it more difficult for the children that are struggling to get through when it says, make sure you're, the course load requirements for the entrance to a four-year public college, and then requiring SATs to graduate, which are excellent goals for the majority of students heading in that direction. I just want to make sure we're not pushing some of the other ones and, to potentially not graduate. So I would be, I don't know, I want to make sure we do the right thing when it comes to those bolts.
And understand, just so that I'm clear, tonight, we're not talking about adopting
No, I
these
know.
2 pages, right? So,
Right.
so.
We're just having a
yeah.
discussion about a few
So
of the
we
bullets.
can,
I just
we
wanted to
can
put it out
pull
there.
off things, or we can table things,
Right.
in certain areas and pick and choose. So we've identified 2 things. We've identified the policy review process, and we've identified the personal and professional qualities and relationships goals.
Just want to clarify too on that same page, the class size. I know
Yeah.
we had some discussion around
Yep.
that. I mean, I think, that came up because there are some class sizes at the middle and high schools that are big.
Yep.
But I wouldn't want that to then be interpreted that it'd be okay to, increase
Yep.
class sizes at lower grades. Just, I think that's a big concern.
Mhm. Yeah, and so we have to look at how to word that sort of, bullet item that, perhaps there's maintain low class sizes for our elementary, maintain low class sizes for
Right,
our.
because if you want to say below 20 at all levels, that'd be great. Yeah, for that.
Wouldn't we all? Wouldn't we all? Wouldn't it be great?
I'd like to keep that vague, just maintain low class size, so it gives us the ability to.
Okay.
Yeah, the only thing with that though is that low class size in
In the-
kindergarten is very different than low class size.
And
in
that's what we're
AP
saying,
calc
that's
class.
one of the challenges of all this, is that, it's completely unacceptable to imagine giving a kindergarten teacher 30 students. But you do have 30 students in some high school
And
classes.
we're not gonna be able to avoid that, especially foreign language, so, in the older grades, but I think, so we can write something that.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's something to think about, but it's an important point to
Yeah.
keep in our. So is there another suggestion of one other goal that 2 other goals? He's.
Did I have 2 fingers?
You
There you
did.
go.
He wants
So
4.
two goals, so that would be a total of 4 goals that we would be,
Well, let me just tell you, there's a couple of things that I've already begun to work with my administrative team.
Mhm.
And so consider whether or not.
Yep.
So one of the things that I've asked for Donna and I to complete is both a curriculum plan and an accompanying professional development plan that supports that
I love
curriculum
that.
revision
Yeah.
plan. So, and naturally, we'd like to bring that to you for your approval, because that's gonna drive a lot of the work that we do and costs for the district.
if you can keep getting those 30 free days, that would be great.
31.
Not gonna happen.
31.
Don't give up the one day.
I'd like to add something to the second finger that you put up. This one, not the
Which
other one.
one?
It's not this one.
We're on tape.
So I'd like more of a focus and understanding of the special ed programs, since
It
it's
was
such a
gonna
big.
That actually was gonna
Special?
be
Was
the
that,
next one.
was that thing?
That was gonna
There
be
you
the
go.
next
Yeah.
one.
Because,
Here.
because I know a lot of it is, just required and mandatory, not much we can do about it, but personally, I've spoken to a number of parents over the last year or 2 or 3 that have expressed opinions, usually strong opinions, about that part of the program, and if they're gonna talk about something, it's usually that side of it. So as a board member, I'd love to know more about it, how it works, what the details are, what's controllable, what isn't. And since it's probably a growing part of the budget, I'd like to better understand that, because I don't feel I could talk, I'm talking out of school now even about it, I don't understand enough about it, like how often, for example, are lawyers required to be in the meetings versus not? Is that an intimidation factor that's wrong for us to do or right for us to do, or is it required for us to do? But I can I can come up with probably 15 or 20 moms and some dads that have specifically talked to me about that. So it's one of my things I'd really like to get a better handle on, because I think I need to know and would want to know.
So is that a board goal, that you will learn more about special education?
And a measurable.
Or is that a superintendent's goal? And
It's a board
it's actually,
goal.
they
It's-
all
Yeah,
go
I think
together.
They
They
do,
all go together.
but I do believe it's more of a board goal
Yeah.
that, you've already talked about the fact that, Bill Neese is gonna be attending more meetings
Yes.
and providing some more information to us. But you have some responsibility around special ed in a goal for yourself.
I do. I talked to Bill today in our meeting about coming up with a related service plan that is, again, a continuous plan K-12, and that we don't have various services at one school and not another, and so that there's a rationale behind why we have social workers in one school, school psychologists in another. And really, so it really is a related service plan, if you will.
Yes.
So a measurable goal would be that you would be able to present us at least with a preliminary draft version of the related service plan by the end of the year.
And I didn't say it earlier, but I'm sure there's, the other things you're looking at with Bill would be, if these outside services keep growing, then, at some point we may be hiring within it. I don't wanna put words in your mouth. Is that
No.
one of the things that, I assumed it, so.
It's one of the most exciting things for a director of special education to be able to do, to create an in-house program, and then.
If the,
And
if the
we've done
numbers.
that.
Right, of course
We've
you have.
done that.
Most districts do
Yep.
do that.
And it does save us, and it provides an immense benefit to the district as a whole when you have that professional with that area of expertise within your district, and you're just not renting them out for an hour here and an hour there, so, yeah,
So
definitely.
let's make that goal, if you will, if it's okay with you, two-pronged. One is that we will facilitate, Bill and I will facilitate more meetings.
Mhm.
How do I want to say this?
More interaction with the
regular.
board.
More
Yeah.
interaction with the board, to facilitate more informational sessions with the board
Mhm.
regarding special education. How about that?
Great. More
And then,
transparency into
in
the
addition
design.
to that, we'll provide a preliminary service plan, related service plan.
Okay.
I think that would probably fall under community and board relations too.
When you say preliminary service plan, the other thing I'd like to see is like a ballpark of what services we're outside the district paying for, and potentially could be doing in service for less,
Yep.
if
And that's really
If
a
that's an option.
budgetary thing that would come, it's something I think we could request from a budget.
At the last budget, when we hired the BCBA.
Right. So we did look at some of that, and I agree with you that we need to always be looking at what are we doing, and at what point does it tip the scales to make it
Mhm.
more
Right.
cost effective to do it in district. Do we have our goals for Dr. O'Reilly?
Could I suggest that I will type them up again?
Yes.
Send them back to you for a
Yes.
final approval at your next meeting?
Yeah.
Make sure that
So
they reflect what you
the
want.
action item is gonna be, sort of not done tonight,
You don't need-
because we
yeah.
don't
Yeah.
need
You
to
don't
have an
need to
action
move
item
it.
until you have
Yep.
those.
Okay.
So then the last item is the superintendent of school evaluation.
So I gave you the copy of the CABE and CAPS team evaluations, if you will. It's a copy of what you will do as a self-reflection as a board. And then there's some rough, actually, a pretty good explanation
Yeah, they
as
are.
to those 4 areas, again, that, on which I will be evaluated on relative to these goals, but relative to my areas of responsibility. So it really is emerging. It is a two-pronged piece for me. You will evaluate me on the success of these 4 goals that you have created for me tonight. But you'll also evaluate me based on all of these responsibilities
4
and how
categories.
well I have executed that in my 9-month tenure. 10 months.
10.
10.
So feedback on this format that Philip has provided to us.
And I think you have done it this way before.
I would say that we have been discussing trying to do a better
Yes.
job of evaluating our superintendent for
For
several
years.
years. And I welcome the structure around this because, this is comprehensive and yet very manageable, in terms that I love the self-reflection piece.
I really
Um,
do. Again,
I
9
think
years
it's-
of seeing boards have really meaningful discussions
Discussions.
about how well they operated as a
Yep.
team has really provided
Yep.
growth.
Yep, absolutely. So, other people's thoughts on this?
So to be clear,
Yeah,
no, this is great, but so we also will be revising even the tool.
this is gonna be the tool.
This is the
This is the
tool.
tool. This
So
we would be adopting a
this
new,
itself is the
this
tool.
document would be the tool. We would be adopting this process
The process, right, but then.
and this tool,
Okay,
saying we're gonna use this evaluation
Okay.
worksheet. And we don't have to do that in total if people have other suggestions, but that is, what's
yeah, no, it's much better.
much better.
Gives us
Actually gives us
Very
better,
relevant.
feedback. Details.
right,
And you can do it this way this year and decide at the
evaluate.
end
Well,
of the
we
year
need to.
whether you want to do this.
Evaluate the
We
evaluation.
need to evaluate at the effectiveness of it,
Yeah.
how it felt for us, what worked for us, what didn't work for us.
but then with the goals, because these say these areas of responsibility, which obviously we're evaluating with the two-pronged approach you talked about, so the goals would be spelled out in this as well?
That'll be a separate document.
Separate.
That you will use
In
as
conjunction,
part
right,
of this.
it'll be part of it,
Those
but
two
they'll be
prongs,
spelled and
yeah.
defined, okay,
Yeah, yep.
gotcha, yeah. I'm good with
Any other comments about this? Okay, so we're making a commitment.
So the time frame is a little bit more crunched here.
Yep.
Because of my tenure, but I think, I still think
I think we're doable, we've,
the mid-year evaluation process should probably, it says here November, December, I would suggest we move it to January.
January.
Even though it will conflict with the budget, that's, you know.
Well, it's gonna be a busy January.
I
We've
just-
all committed to working really hard.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding on page 2 where it says topic 1 and topic 2. One is obviously open to the public, and the second one was executive session. Is that executive session supposed to transpire just at the end, or is that?
When we're evaluating his performance, that's an
Right.
executive session.
But it's under topic 2 where it says the beginning of the year, July and September. I'm not sure it's written clearly.
I'm sorry, I don't. So.
Under the heading, beginning of the new evaluation year,
Right.
July
Yep.
slash
Yep.
September, I'm
Yep.
assuming, we're gonna call this a new evaluation because he's a new hire.
Yep.
Are we supposed to then have an executive session to discuss this with him, topic 2, or no?
I don't think you'll need it.
We can waive that.
I concur, but I'm just
We
trying to
can
see
waive
if-
that. We can waive that.
I just wanna make sure.
Mhm.
Again, the
And it's
timeframe is a little bit
recommended evaluation process, so, we're committing to this process as best as we can, understanding, and we've said this, that we are, we're starting late.
And I would see, Ben, it's a good question, but I would see that piece would happen next July for the following year.
Mhm.
So you'll take that evaluation. We'll meet in executive session to discuss my performance based on these two prongs. We'll also meet in executive session to review and approve the written evaluation that will be placed in my personnel file. And we'll then say, okay, so what are the next steps moving forward? What are our next set of goals, and what do we hope to accomplish in the coming year?
Any other comments or questions? Okay, so we need a motion. Anyone?
None of you guys?
You're doing so good.
See, welcome to my world.
Yes.
Because I had
I
to do
know,
this.
I understand.
And now I'm not supposed to do this, so, yeah. Okay.
I would like to make a motion to the full board, to accept the new, superintendent, two-pronged, evaluation approach as presented tonight.
Second, I need a second. Mike?
Yes.
Is gonna second that. Any further discussion? It's a long time coming. We have been wanting to do a new evaluation for quite a while, and this is an excellent tool, so I'm very excited and ready to embrace this.
Maybe that should have been one of my goals.
Yeah.
Sure.
Wrong.
Wrong. Okay, all those in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. All right, committee reports. So we have not had any committee meetings since our last one. I don't know as though, I think we can waive the committee reports for
Sure.
tonight.
I'll
So
make
we.
the motion to waive the committee reports.
Okay, thank you.
Is there a
So
second?
we are,
Is there a second?
I got your second.
okay, second, and we're all in favor of waiving the
Yes.
committee?
Yes.
Okay. Audience of citizens. Now you can
Run.
go.
Run.
So just a little preface, that as I said at the beginning of the meeting, if you would like to address the board, please state your name and your address as clearly as possible, because our person who's taking minutes needs to capture that information. The second thing is that we, as a board, the policy is that we will hear any and all comments, but that we do not get into a dialogue or a discussion about it, that things are captured and then there may be a response further down, but just so that people are clear. And I would just ask that people also respect the Robert's Rules of a time limit of 3 minutes per comment, just to respect people's time. So, with that, thank you.
Janet Ellsworth, 62 Riverview Street. One quick question. You keep saying DIR or something. What is that?
DIRG, District
Reference Group.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Okay. The other comment, it's back to the